Order, order. The National Assembly is in session. Item 1, questions to the First Minister. Question 1, David Ellis-Thomas.
Thank you, esteemed Deputy Presiding Officer. What discussions has the First Minister had with the Secretary of State for Wales on the proposed St David's Day agreement?
I've had a number of discussions with the Secretary of State, and another discussion will take place later on today.
Given what's already been published by the UK government in the command paper on Scotland in the UK, an enduring settlement, is it the First Minister's intention to secure similar draft clauses for the Welsh Parliament and Government, as is proposed to the Scottish Government, to be enduring, to have an enduring place in the UK's constitutional arrangements?
I don't believe that an enduring settlement has been offered to Wales to date, and equality is a very important thing, so that what is being offered to Scotland should be offered to Wales, and it's a matter for us to decide what would be in the interests of Wales to accept, but we are a long way off that position. But of course we continue to play a role in the process which was established by the Secretary of State, but there's quite some way to go again to get any kind of agreement.
Paul Davis.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. First Minister, I'm sure that you will have discussed the Barnett formula with the Secretary of State in a number of meetings that you've had with him. In light of these discussions, how are you intending to secure fair funding for Wales in the context of retaining the Barnett formula?
Well, the Barnett floor, that's the way we're going to do that in order to ensure that Wales is safeguarded in future. The United Kingdom government has not been supportive of any kind of resolution to the underfunding that Wales suffers at the moment. We hope that we'll see some way forward next week.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. After the decision yesterday, the case for a reserve powers model of devolution becomes even stronger. Will the First Minister set out the red lines he would expect from a successful St David's Day process?
I fear I may not have much time to go through every red line, but perhaps if I could inform them of some of them. A reserve powers model with the proper division between reserve powers and those powers that would remain at Westminster. Wales's funding, underfunding being addressed, that much is important. Further fiscal devolution in some fields, and of course the Assembly to control its own electoral system, including of course the entrenchment of the existence of the Assembly, so that it could not be abolished at the whim of Westminster.
Mick Antonev.
First Minister, you'll be aware of the decision yesterday, although you may not have had time to digest its detail. Good for the insurance industry, bad for asbestos victims, and confusing for devolution. On the assumption that most people consider that we should have the power to do the sort of things that the bill intended, which is help asbestos victims in Wales, how are you going to approach negotiations with the UK government to ensure that we actually do have the powers clearly, without confusion, in order to be able to do these sorts of things which most people out in the public actually think are sensible things that we should be able to do?
I'm afraid it shows the fact that the current devolution settlement is not fit for purpose. It is unclear in so many areas, and that's why, of course, all parties, I think I'm correct in saying, wish to see a move to a model that is far clearer and far more appropriate for 21st century Wales. Yesterday, of course, was a disappointment. It now needs to be rectified as quickly as possible.
Question 2, Roderick Glyn-Thomas.
Will the First Minister make a statement on patient waiting times for operations within the Hywel Dda Health Board?
Well, I expect all patients to be seen as soon as possible, and in accordance, of course, with their clinical priority, as well as being seen within the Welsh maximum waiting times.
A constituent of mine came to see me recently. He had gone to see his GP 2 years ago with a hernia, and having heard nothing, he sought information from the surgeon in the hospital as to when he would be seen. He was told that although he had been to see his GP in April 2013, that he hadn't been referred to hospital until April of last year, and that he wouldn't be seen until July of this year, or June rather of this year. What can you as a government do to ensure that these delays don't happen between the GPs and the surgeon and then within the hospitals?
Well, it's very difficult, of course, to give a view on an individual case, but it sounds to me from what the member has said that some problem in communication had arisen between the GP and the hospital. I'm very happy to consider this particular case on behalf of the individual and the member, if you could send me the details.
Angela Burns.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I do appreciate it's difficult to comment on individual cases, but Hywel has such a track record on this in this area. 95% of patients should be waiting less than 26 weeks for treatment. And when my colleague Roderick Glenn-Thomas brought this question forward, I literally had to choose between the raft of constituents in front of me, and I'm going to just pick one case of a woman who's waiting First Minister for 27 months for a follow-up pain relief injection, has just been told she has to wait another 10 months. As we all know, pain is utterly debilitating. What can you, as First Minister, do with your Minister for Health to ensure that this health board does step up to the mark and start giving people adequate treatment in a timely and kind manner?
Very difficult, of course, as the member recognises, to comment on an individual issue. I can say that median waiting time in Hywel Dda in November of last year was up to 9 weeks. That is what most people will wait, but of course there are some people who wait longer, and the member's given an example there, and I have no reason to doubt what she said to me. That goes well beyond that. Again, I make the same offer to her as I did to the member for Carmarthen East and Dunevor. If she wishes to pass on the details, I'd be more than happy, of course, to investigate.
I will now call the party leaders. First this week, Leader of Plaid Cymru, Leanne Wood.
Diolch yn fawr. I read with interest your comments in the press this morning offering advice to your party leader ahead of the coming election. And you said that we can't go into the election saying that we will be a little less tough than the Tories. As a government, what calculations have you made as to the effect on the Welsh budget of a Labour Prime Minister as opposed to a Tory Prime Minister?
I'm very glad indeed that the Leader of Plaid Cymru takes so much notice of what I say in the press, and I thank her for that. We know that roughly the difference will be, in terms of the budget, will be that the budgets of the UK government will be cut by 23% more under a Tory government than will be the case under a Labour government, a significant difference.
According to analysis from the Institute of Fiscal Studies, First Minister, they looked at your party's spending plans too over the next Parliament, and there is to be a cut of around 2.2% to devolved government's budgets over the next Parliament under a Labour government. Isn't that just a little less tough than the Tories, First Minister? No,
the Tory equivalent is 26%, if I remember rightly, for the cuts that they would make. So there's a significant difference for the people of Wales in voting in a Labour government that will look to protect those areas that are most important for the people of Wales, and the vast cuts that will be imposed by a Tory or indeed Tory-led government. And the Institute for Fiscal Studies has illustrated the significant gulf that exists between those of us who are committed to spending on those who are most in need and those who would cut budgets at a ruthless rate.
I'm not clear, First Minister, whether you're actually disputing the IFS figures or whether you're disputing your own party's spending plans. Based on current spending, a 2.2% cut from Labour equates to £335 million less for the Welsh budget for the expenditure on Welsh public services. That is more austerity, isn't it? How can people have hope when your promise to the people of Wales is more cuts, more austerity, more of the same?
Not at all. We know that the situation as far as the Tories is concerned, and this is what the Institute for Fiscal Studies said, was a 26% cut in public budgets. And that is an enormous cut that would take us back many, many decades in terms of what the state would look like. We want to address that issue. We want to make sure, of course, that we get a Barnett floor to address Wales's underfunding, which I'm sure she will support. And we have shown in the past 4 years, despite the tough budget settlements, a cut of 10% that we've received from a Tory government, that we can prioritise spending for the people of Wales. We will continue to do that in Wales, and I'm absolutely sure we will continue to see that happening in May, as long as the Tories don't win.
Leader of the Opposition, Andrew R.T. Davis.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. First Minister, the news at Ysbyty Glan-Clwyd today is very troubling, to say the least. This chamber spent a lot of time, and I know you took personal responsibility for maternity services in North Wales. What is your assessment of the current situation around maternity services at that particular hospital in North Wales?
The first thing I need to say is this does not in any way interfere with the decision on the Cyflwynir. That's important to state. My view always was that the Cyflwynir would be a new operation. It wouldn't be something that would simply be grafted onto the existing department. So I want to make that absolutely clear and to give that assurance to people in the area around Glan-Clwyd. The local health board must take responsibility. It must discharge its duties. That much is true. And I expect them to do that in the course of this afternoon. I expect them then to take steps to ensure that, that any announcement they may make is temporary, and that there's a reinstatement of the full service as quickly as possible at the hospital. They must take responsibility, and so must the senior medical staff. Many reports have illustrated the dysfunctional nature of the relationship between the senior medical staff at the hospital, and that must be dealt with. This situation, whatever decision they take, must be taken on a temporary basis, but the Cyflwynir remains on track, in my mind, for the site at Glan-Clwyd.
Well, I have to say I can hear members saying that they've made little or no progress on that particular aspect of maternity services in North Wales, First Minister. So I think maybe you need to assess how much progress has been made, despite the assurances that you have given. What is a huge concern to many people around the potential for this announcement will be the downgrading of maternity services at Ysbyty Glan-Clwyd. And ultimately, you talk of it being a temporary measure. What does the word temporary mean in this context? You're the government. What are you going to hold the health board to account if they do have to suspend services temporarily at this particular hospital? What is your interpretation?
I would expect them to look to reinstate the service in the summer of next year. It's important, of course, to make sure that all steps are taken to do that. It is simply not possible to carry on with the existing relationship between the senior medical staff in that department. Many reports have illustrated that it is dysfunctional, and those medical staff need to look to themselves in terms of the way they have worked with each other. The local health board as well have to make sure that they are able to discharge the responsibilities that they have, and I would expect them to look to reinstate this service in the summer of next year. That is the aim that they must have.
What I'm troubled by your answer, First Minister, is that you seem to be apportioning blame to the medical staff here in this particular equation, which I have to say I find surprising. And maybe in response to this third question, you could enlarge on that, because one of the key problems does seem to be the ability to attract and retain staff. And ultimately, we know that the Welsh Government have successive campaigns to attract staff here in Wales. 2 years ago, the Welsh Government, under the previous Health Minister, Leslie Griffiths, launched a campaign. It just doesn't seem to be working, First Minister, and when you made your announcement, you did highlight the ability for the Health Board to attract staff as being a key requirement to the retention of the service. Now, what interaction has the Welsh Government been having with the Health Board to make sure that they have been trying their darndest to attract staff to fill these posts that wouldn't rely on the service being withdrawn? And can you enlarge on what you've just said in your previous answers to me about clinical staff and medical staff need to look to themselves to resolve this problem?
Well, the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists have actually said this. For example, the Steele report showed in May 2013, they described, well, they went further than me, unprofessional behaviour between consultants with public disagreements, bullying and intimidating behaviour. Poor adherence to requirements for adequate notice to book and coordinate leave, leading to difficulties covering rotas and cancellation of clinics. Now, those are not my words, those are the words of the Steele report. The Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists report in 2014 also talked about problems with team dynamics, lack of engagement with governance arrangements, supervision arrangements for junior staff. So yes, there is a need amongst other, I mean, this is not entirely down to the medical staff, but they need to look at the way they've operated. There's no question about that, and these are not my words. These are the words stated in 2 reports. But the local health board also have a responsibility to make sure that they take steps, firstly, to ensure that patients are safe. That's the first thing. Secondly, to make sure that these arrangements are temporary. And thirdly, of course, to make sure that people are reassured as these arrangements move forward, that they will be able to move smoothly to give birth in the other hospitals in Betsy Cadwaladr. That is what the local health board have a responsibility to do, and we will expect them to do that.
Leader of the Welsh Liberal Democrats, Kirsty Williams.
Thank you very much, Deputy Presiding Officer. But First Minister, you took personal responsibility in May of last year to oversee the establishment of a special care baby unit at Ysbyty Glan Clwyd. And you told us then that you would be working with the Health Board to produce a business case and you would keep Assembly members updated. We have yet to see that business case, nor have you kept us updated. Now today, as we've heard, we've discovered that Ysbyty Glan Clwyd cannot provide consultant-led services because of recruitment difficulties. It is simply not credible for you to stand there, First Minister, and say that the plans for the special care baby unit will go ahead at Glan Clwyd if that hospital can't provide consultant-led services. Babies, the most vulnerable babies, will be being born in Bangor and in Wrexham, and now you're expecting them to be transferred to a special care baby unit in Glan Clwyd. It is simply not credible. Why has the plan, the business plan that you promised in May of last year, not been produced?
It is for the local health board to produce that plan. I said once again, there is no difficulty with the Saesneg on the Glan Clwyd site. I expect that plan to move forward. I expect the local health board to move that plan forward. I expect the Saesneg to be set up at Glan Clwyd. It was never the intention that the Saesneg was simply to be grafted on to the existing department for the reasons that we've seen in part today. That Saesneg has to be taken forward by the LHB, and I will certainly be, as the member has already said, I took responsibility for maternity services, not for Glan Clwyd's current maternity unit, but certainly for the Saesneg, and I want to see that Saesneg move forward with a business plan and set up.
First Minister, are you really saying that you expect consultant-led obstetrics to be delivered in Bangor and Wrexham, but the special care baby unit to be in Glan Clwyd? Because if you are, I do not know who you're getting medical advice from. But let's be honest, this isn't the only service that is currently under threat because of a difficulty that your government has had in the recruitment and the retention of staff. How confident are you, First Minister, that health boards will be able to maintain paediatric rotas later this year, and that paediatric services currently being delivered at the Royal Gwent and at Neville Hall Hospital, and paediatric services being delivered at your own District General Hospital in Bridgend and Morrison Hospital will be able to be maintained?
We are confident they will be able to be maintained. We expect the local health boards to do just that. The Leader of the Liberal Democrats misunderstands the situation at Glan Clwyd, as I said earlier on. My understanding is that the local health board wishes this to be a temporary situation. We would expect them to resolve this issue in the course of this year and the Saesneg to be placed at Glan Clwyd. That is still the plan.
I'll believe your plan when I see a business case which you promised that you would be working with the health boards to deliver 9 months ago. The plan hasn't even started, and I would ask you, what have you been doing in the last 9 months to see that plan being developed? First Minister, how many other services and announcements like the one we've seen at Glan Clwyd today are the Welsh public going to have to endure because of a failure to recruit and retain vital staff? You said your health organisations had to go ahead to prevent the very scenario that we have seen today. How many other services will have to endure an emergency transfer or closure under your leadership?
There are no services that fall into that category. Bear in mind it's for the local health boards to resolve this issue. And thirdly, of course, there are specific reasons at Glan Clwyd why this has happened. Specific reasons. The Deanery did not see training as adequate. There have been problems in the relationships between the medical staff there. Those are not my words. Those are the words of 2 different reports that have taken place. And I say once again, I expect the Saesneg to be taken forward by the local health board. We will support them where we can, and we will make sure that the Saesneg is placed at Glan Clwyd. That remains the situation. I've said it many, many times, and that is something that I expect the local health board to take forward.
Question 3 has been withdrawn. Question 4, Bethan Jenkins.
Will the Minister make a statement on open cast mining in Wales?
Well, Minerals Planning Policy Wales sets out planning policy for minerals extraction and related development. It's supported by comprehensive advice contained in MTAN 2, which sets out the policies for open cast and deep mine coal development, including issues such as buffer zones and restoration.
Thank you, First Minister. You will know as a constituency AM that concern is building up with regards to open casting. We have a report that says MTAN 2 needs repurposing, something your Minister said recently he was looking at. Your government has been sat on a request from me to call in East Pit for 2 years, something which I believe Gwenda Thomas has also requested. And we have a judgment which states clearly that responsibility for restoring oak regeneration owned sites remains with Celtic Energy. In light of all of this, would you support the calls by Weinidogion Assembly member for a moratorium on open cast sites and for a stop to current provisions so that we can have a similar moratorium as we took with regards to fracking last week?
Well, bear in mind the moratorium wouldn't help the situation in East Pit or in Park Slip. The damage was done many, many, many years ago. At the root of the problem is the fact that not enough money was set aside to restore the site when British Coal was privatised. It was a sweetener that was put there by the then UK government to privatise open cast and not make it too expensive for the open cast operators. We now find ourselves in a situation where there is a substantial gap between the money that was set aside and the money that would now be required to restore the site. My view is this is the UK government's creation, and the UK government have a responsibility to provide the funds for the people of those areas in order for those sites to be restored. It's not good enough for them simply to say, well, sorry, it's all devolved now, it's all a matter for you. You can clear up the mess that we created. And so we will seek to engage with the UK government to make sure that they are, as my parliamentary colleague Madeleine Moon MP has done, to make sure that they realise they have a responsibility to the people who live around those sites in order to see them restored.
Lynn Neagle.
First Minister, as your personal intervention into the Celtic energy situation helped underline, there are currently huge question marks hanging over the open cast industry in Wales. A moratorium would help my constituents in Farteg, who yet again are left fighting an application that is in clear breach of MTAN 2 planning guidance. Will you listen to the growing calls now for a moratorium so that your government has the breathing space it needs to undertake the strategic review of the open cast industry in Wales that myself and others feel is absolutely vital?
Well, I say to the member that what has happened with regard to the East Pit and with Park Slip adds weight to her argument. I'll take it no further than that at this stage. What I will ask the Minister to do, or he and I will discuss this, is see what can be done in the meantime to restore confidence in the issue of open cast mining, given the current situation with regard to some sites across South Wales in particular. Not unique to Wales, but an issue that's arisen across the whole of the UK. We cannot have a situation, clearly, where we have a number of open cast sites in the future that cannot be restored because there is no money to restore them.
Antoinette Sandbach.
Well, Minister, given that, will you put all your correspondence in the public domain for the last 5 years with the UK government seeking to establish a resolution to this matter so that we can all see exactly what steps have been taken by you personally or your ministers?
Well, the responsibility lies ultimately, of course, with oak regeneration and with Celtic Energy, and with Neath Potobach Council in the case of Park Slip and with East Pit. Now, it is clear now that the issue is a failure in the early 1990s to secure enough money being set aside for the restoration of those sites. Either she recognises that failure or is happy to see communities live with the consequences of the failure of her party. And I say, well, she says 18 years of hanging about. I haven't been First Minister for 18 years. The Assembly hasn't been in existence for 18 years. All this happened in the early 1990s. She cannot escape, not her, but her party cannot escape responsibility for the creation of this mess. What they did was ensure that the operators did not have to put aside sufficient money for restoration in order for them to sweeten the deal for open cast mining and its privatisation. We are now dealing with those consequences, and the UK government cannot escape the consequences of the actions taken forward by their own party some 20 years ago.
Gwenda Thomas.
Will you join with me, First Minister, in congratulating Madeleine Moon, Labour MP for your constituency, for securing a Westminster debate on the 29th of January on the subject of restoration of open cast coal sites. In view of the response from the Minister of State, and I take it the party opposite will want to read that, it's well worth doing, for Business and Enterprise, the Minister of State for Business and Enterprise, to that debate, will you ask our Minister for Natural Resources to engage in any future discussions and to seek to ensure the paramount importance of the well-being of open caste communities in Wales and their right to have their expectations realised in regard to the restoration of open caste sites along which they have lived as neighbours, sometimes as far back as 1948?
Indeed, I know the Minister is fully cited on this issue, and in view of that, I thought what was in the circumstances a helpful response from the Minister in Westminster, much more helpful than what we've heard from the benches opposite in the course of this debate, these questions in this chamber this afternoon. I think there is scope there now for us to discuss the issue with the UK government to come to a solution. What people want to see with these open cast sites is a remedy being applied, restoration taking place. Certainly that is our intention in terms of as a government to discuss this issue now with the UK government and to make sure that a problem that was created in Whitehall is resolved in Whitehall.
William Powell.
Diolch, Dwp Lawr. First Minister, members of the United Valleys Action Group have raised with me concerns that the developments of national significance that are envisaged in the current planning bill may serve to undermine the voice of communities faced with applications for open cast and similar development. In the context of this, and also given that your government has set its face against the possibility of any form of third-party right of appeal in such cases, what reassurance can you offer to communities, particularly coalfield communities, in this regard?
They need not fear the developments of national significance. The intention is, of course, to make sure that such developments are taken forward properly, to make sure that the resources are devoted to dealing with such applications, and then, of course, for the proper decision to be made. But they need not fear that this in some way interferes with their ability to put their case, whether it would be to a local authority in the current circumstances, or indeed to a minister in circumstances once the planning bill has been passed.
Question 5, Sandy Mewis.
Thank you. First Minister, will you provide an update on what the Welsh Government is doing to cut smoking rates in Wales?
Well, we've prioritised smoking cessation as part of our commitment to reduce the number of adult smokers in Wales to 16% by 2020, and services include the National Stop Smoking Wales service, run by Public Health Wales, and local pharmacy, GP and hospital services.
Thank you for that. Smoking rates in Wales have come down. That's the good news. But the recent report showing increased levels in lung cancer amongst women reinforces the message that more does need to be done. The introduction of plain packaging for cigarettes would help, and so will the ban on smoking in cars carrying children. So, First Minister, consultation on that proposal is now closed. Can I ask when we can expect the ban to be implemented so that young people will be protected from the dangers of second-hand smoke?
I can say to the member that the Minister will be making an announcement on this matter on Thursday.
Darren Miller.
I'm very pleased to hear that the Minister will be making an announcement on this later this week. It's something which I very much support. But one of the things which your government has said that it wants to do in order to reduce harm from tobacco is to introduce a ban on smoking, on the use of e-cigarettes in private and enclosed places. I'm very concerned about this because I do think that it is very clear from the evidence that the use of e-cigarettes has helped many people quit smoking altogether and therefore reduced harm from tobacco. Will your government relook at its proposals in order to ensure that the harmful effects from tobacco smoking can be reduced and that there is still the opportunity for e-cigarettes to be used in as widespread a places as they currently are?
No, and the reason is we can't recommend e-cigarettes as a smoking cessation aid until they've been proven to be effective as such, and they are a long way from being in that situation. So certainly the current situation is that that is not something we would be looking to consider in the absence of such evidence.
Question 6, Keith Davis.
Question 6, Keith Davis. Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Will the First Minister provide an update on the Welsh Government support for the Welsh economy?
We are taking a variety of actions to support the Welsh economy, including actions to support businesses to start and grow and to make it easy for them to access finance. Reviewing business rates policy in Wales, supporting international trade and investment, and of course promoting Wales as a tourism destination and transport improvements.
Thank you, First Minister. Recent Joseph Rowntree Foundation report states that 29.4% of families in Wales are living on less than the living wage. Do you agree with me that it's important to tax mansions in the UK so that we can improve the Welsh economy to provide opportunities for our poorest families?
Well, yes, that's right. But what's important for us to bear in mind is that without more equality, an improvement in the economy isn't going to be effective. And we see that at the moment. They say that the economy is improving, but what we don't see is that ordinary people are getting any kind of boost in their income. And that's why it is extremely important to ensure that if things are to improve, that everybody feels that improvement. We, of course, have the scheme to tackle poverty, and this is something which is being reviewed very regularly in order to ensure that it's as effective as possible.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Last week, the Federation of Master Builders highlighted that following the publication of their State of Trade survey for the last quarter of 2014, the increasing skills shortages across building trades. Will the First Minister outline what measures he intends to address these shortage of skills?
Well, we expect to work, of course, with them and also with the Construction Skills Network to make sure that the skills are there. We know that construction is expected to grow in Wales at a rate higher than the UK average, which of course is a testament to the policies that we have put in place as a government. And of course, more work is done in terms of has been done in terms of apprenticeships to make sure that we have the skills that are required. But we will of course work with the companies involved in construction and indeed with those involved in identifying the need for skills to make sure that the skills are there in order to fuel the increase in construction that we expect to see.
Rhys Iorwerth.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To follow up on Keith Davis's question, isn't the truth that one significantly important step to respond to poverty, particularly in-work poverty, which continues to exist, is to follow Plaid Cymru's policy of insisting on a statutory living wage introduced rather than a minimum wage, and that would have the impact of assisting the Welsh economy ultimately also?
Well, of course, we're very supportive of ensuring that that happens in the public sector, but there are no plans at all for that to happen in the private sector. But the message that I would give, and it's the message that David Cameron has given, is that it's very important that people see a growth in their income if they think that things are improving.
First Minister, last year the UK government announced a £1.1 billion city deal for Glasgow and the Clyde Valley, and clearly a similar level of investment, a similar package could have a transformative effect on Wales's city regions too. What bids has the Welsh Government made to the UK Government for a city deal for example, the Cardiff city region?
Well, it's a matter ultimately for the city region to decide what it wishes to do in terms of such a bid. But we will be more than happy to support them if they wish to make such a bid in order to bring that money into Wales.
Question 7, Lindsay Whittle.
Well, in view of your answers to previous questions, First Minister, I will emphasise the first word of my question. When is the ban on smoking in cars carrying children going to be implemented?
I refer the member to the answer I gave some moments ago. There will be an announcement on Thursday.
Well, it wasn't really clear. You merely indicated that the statement will be made later. So I can only assume that at least you obviously have the rights of children at heart. Maintaining that positive thought, when will you end the legalised violence against children in Wales by removing the defence of reasonable punishment?
Order, that is not relevant to this question. Christine Chapman.
Thank you. First Minister, a recent study has found that smoking remains a major risk factor in unexplained child deaths in Wales. Examining 45 cases across Wales, the study found that 25 children who died lived in smoking households. The report found that premature birth, low birth weight and co-sleeping could also be important contributory factors. However, the rate of smoking amongst parents was extremely high. I welcome the ban on smoking in cars with children, but what further steps will the Welsh Government take to reduce smoking in Wales, particularly during pregnancy and afterwards?
Well, I can say that 4 LHBs have worked together to improve their uptake of smoking cessation services by pregnant women in their areas. They tested different models. The interim results were encouraging. A final report on that work will be in place shortly. I understand that Cwmtaf has already decided to invest additional resources from their Flying Start budget over the next 2 years in their service delivery model before the full results become available. They've recruited 2 additional maternity support workers and a midwife to take that work forward, and that will enable their current project in the Rhondda pilot area to also include the whole of the Cynon Valley and Taffili.
Mohammed Asghar.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. First, Minister, recent figure revealed that Wales has the 3rd highest rate of lung cancer in women among the 40 countries in the European Union. Does the First Minister agree that banning smoking in cars carrying children must be part of a series of measures designed to tackling smoking in Wales, such as banning smoking in hospital grounds and on the doors for entrance and exit on the ground floor in the hospital, where there's always welcoming people and they're smoking when you enter the hospital all the time in Wales? Thank you.
Well, without prejudice to the announcement that will be made on Thursday, the idea of banning smoking in cars when children are present has much to commend it.
Question 8, Clear Griffith.
Question 8, Clear Griffiths. Will the First Minister make a statement on the provision of Welsh medium education?
Increasing access for children to Welsh medium education is a priority for Welsh Government, and of course local authorities are duty bound to ensure that they have Welsh and education strategic plans in place.
Thank you for that response. The Welsh language education strategy of your government expects local authorities to plan comprehensively for Welsh medium education, that they must ensure the sustainability of Welsh medium education and safeguard provision of Welsh medium education, and must take that into account in making statutory proposals to change provision within schools. Do you believe that any suggestion that the closure of a Category 1 Welsh medium school and forcing those children into a Category 2, which is a 2 stream in the same class, Welsh and English, would be in keeping with that policy?
Well, first of all, this is a matter for the local education authority in the first place. I know the member is talking about the situation at Ysgol Pentre, Celyn and Ysgol Llanfair. Consultation is ongoing and they remain open, and it's extremely important that the stakeholders give their views to that in that consultation, but bearing in mind any kind of intervention that may be made by the Minister for Education in future, I cannot say any more than that, but it's extremely important that no authority does anything that weakens the language in their area.
Burns.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. First Minister, the interim report evaluating the Welsh medium education strategy says that while the strategy has led to a wide range of activities that support schools and the development of the education infrastructure, evidence suggests that the strategy is not as much of a priority to organisations as some other policy drivers. How will you, First Minister, ensure that the strategy does gain more traction with organisations, given that bilingualism is such an asset as well as a right?
Well, bear in mind, of course, local authorities are required to produce Welsh and education strategic plans. They are required to set ambitious targets to boost the percentage of 7-year-old children who experience Welsh medium education. I can say that all 22 authorities have their plans in place. They've submitted their revised plans and an update on progress for us to approve or otherwise. So it is the case that they must submit their plans in order for ministers to be satisfied that the plans are robust, and then of course all local authorities will be expected to deliver on those plans.
Aled Roberts. Diolch. Prif Weinidog.
Thank you. First Minister, a proposal has been approved in Wrexham which includes no targets and no provision to meet demand. There will be a growth of some 50% within the secondary sector over the next 3 or 4 years, and you have said that there is a review or some kind of inspection carried out at present. I understand that the Minister is to respond by mid-February. What will happen if those plans demonstrate that there isn't sufficient planning by local authorities? What will you do as a government?
Well, we'll tell them to go back and do it again. That'll be the reply. It's extremely important that the plans are robust and strong, and if any plan doesn't come up to the standards that we expect of the local authorities, then that plan will not be approved. Without speaking specifically about any particular plan, that is the general situation and the general principles that we will adopt.
9, Mark Isherwood.
What support does the Welsh Government provide to ex-forces personnel?
Well, we are committed to ensuring our ex-forces personnel are supported and not disadvantaged due to their service, and the range of support and services available is detailed in our package of support for the armed forces community in Wales.
Thank you. Well, Welsh Government guidance only calls for local authorities to disregard the first £10 of a war pension payment when deciding how much an injured veteran should pay for their social care, placing certain veterans at a disadvantage due to the timing of their injury, where those injured prior to the 5th of April 2005 only have the first £10 of their compensation protected, but those injured after the 5th of April 2005 are able to keep their compensation in its entirety. Last week, the Finance and Business Minister stated it was unclear to her whose responsibility this would be, whether in terms of Welsh Government powers, local government and the UK Government, but this does result for Welsh Government guidance, and 2 local authorities in Wales at least are treating people fairly. What action will you therefore take as First Minister to ensure that this discrepancy is looked at as a matter of urgency?
I think the member raises an important issue. It deserves a full answer, and I will write to him with a full answer to his concerns.
Alan Fred Jones.
Thank you very much. Young men and women who join the army and the military have suffered because of the enthusiasm of Westminster governments to go to war, including the illegal Iraq war. Of course, we've seen the loss of life, terrible disabilities, and of course, mental illnesses amongst former members of the military. Have you any data as a government as regards the percentage of people suffering from mental health who are ex-military?
I don't have those figures to hand, but I will write to the member with that figure if it is available. But of course, we are proud of the services that we do provide to those who do have mental health issues, and of course what we're doing in working with organisations representing veterans in order to ensure that those services are available. For example, there is a therapist available for those who have been in the military of the armed forces in all health boards in Wales, and that's the only national service for veterans in the nations of the UK.
Question 10, Jeff Cuthbert.
Will the First Minister make a statement on the importance of volunteering in Wales?
Well, we greatly value those who freely contribute their time and expertise, of course, to help others. It's an important expression of citizenship, volunteering. Our new third sector scheme renews our commitment to support volunteers, and this year we provided over £3 million to demonstrate this through volunteering grants and funding for volunteer centres.
Thank you for that answer, First Minister. In a few weeks, we will be celebrating our own National St David's Day Awards. Meanwhile, in my constituency, the Aber Valley Heritage Group put in a tremendous amount of fundraising and hard work to ensure that the Welsh National Mining Memorial in St Genedd was opened in time for the centenary of the 1913 Universal Colliery disaster, and I know that you attended. Meanwhile, the volunteers of the Caerphilly Miners Centre for the Community have done an exemplary job raising funds to preserve and convert the town's former General Hospital into a multi-use facility for local people, and the Welsh Government supported both projects. So, First Minister, do you agree with me that these are just 2 examples of the excellent and committed work done by selfless volunteers across Wales, and it's important that their contribution is recognised?
I entirely agree that they're 2 good examples that demonstrate the vital contribution that volunteers make, of course, to community life in Wales. They're projects that I'm familiar with, particularly, of course, the Welsh National Mining Memorial. And we know that, of course, that without that army of volunteers, there are many people who would not receive the help that they want. There are many community projects that would not be taken forward, and there's an example that the member has given there of what robust volunteering and determined volunteering can achieve.
Question 11, Peter Black.
Will the First Minister make a statement on how the Welsh Government is raising educational standards for disadvantaged learners?
Well, we're committed to ensuring that all children in Wales reach their full educational potential, and children who are disadvantaged often require additional support, and of course we have strategies in place to do just that, the Pupil Deprivation Grant being one of them.
Thank you for that answer, First Minister. You know, of course, that as local authorities are setting the budgets, a number of them are aiming to cut the amount of money available to schools. Can you confirm, therefore, that your commitment to increase funding for education in schools by 1% above the block grants remains and will be delivered next year, and also that the, local authorities will not be able to hide behind the pupil deprivation grant in delivering that commitment?
No, the pupil deprivation grant is extra. We expect the pupil deprivation grant is something that we should look as something that is on top of the money that we already provide for education. We also have to make sure, of course, that the 1% increase that we have already explained many times in this chamber is taken through. If any local authority feels that it cannot do that, it will have to explain why.
Thank you, First Minister. Item 2 is business statement and announcement.